Hey, welcome to our On the Offense podcast. This is the second in our series of three podcasts where we looked at, we're in the right place, which was Texas. That's what we talked about the last time. The right time, I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. And then the next one will be the right people. When I say the right time, we've hit the ground at the right time because trends are pointing towards smaller agencies. There's still some great large agencies, but that market's consolidating a bit. And John's going to go through some of the trends that make it probably a better time to be in a smaller place. We're happy that you're here to talk to us. And based on when this is airing, I hope you all had a great 4th of July. We're going to do something a little bit different too with this, a new tradition where we'll give you three takeaways at the end of this podcast that we hope will be helpful for you. And with that, I'll turn it over to my business partner, John Clendenning.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. And yes, the 4th of July is all about tradition. I hope you had a traditional 4th. And you know what this means, Jeff? This means we're now in the second half of the year, which is unbelievable to me.
Yikes.
Yikes. Exactly. Last podcast, we focused on the first part, which was right place, meaning in our case, Texas, even more specifically, Dallas. We talked about both Dallas and Texas as a whole last time, and really why it's such a great place to do business. Today, we're going to focus on part two, which is right time. So what do we mean by that? What we mean is that our agency, which is now, as you hear this, almost a year old to the day, we're going to be about a week out from our 1-year anniversary. And what we mean by right time is that our agency was launched at the same time that some real tailwinds were kicking in the agency world, tailwinds for smaller agencies like ours. The two trends that I want to talk about here, and this is going to be the focus of a LinkedIn piece that I actually post. I believe it's going to be the same week we post the podcast, Jeff. Is two things. One is the clear trend move away from in-house agencies to outside partners, so outsourcing essentially. And then the second trend that we've seen is a move away from larger agencies to smaller ones. Now, these are not brand new trends that they've hit in the last month or so. We saw these things coming when we launched the agency a year ago, but they've really taken hold and accelerated in the years since we launched the agency. So let's take each of these two individually. So the first one is the clear trend away from in-house agencies in favor of outsourcing. So, I mean, what it really, you're a CMO or you're a CEO, and you need to have your marketing department and or your separate communications department. You really have a choice. Do you have all of those people inside the company as essentially an in-house agency? Jeff and I have both led such in-house agencies in our careers. Or do you outsource the work to an outside party? And our perspective would be, and this is in sync with where the market appears to be going right now, is why pay all that money for headcount? And by the way, benefits as well, when you can pay an agency to do the work. Not only does a company save money when doing this, and the research backs that up, it tends to be less expensive to outsource the work. So not only do you tend to save money, you also, as a company, it's much easier to maintain the financial flexibility that companies, sadly, Jeff, right, increasingly need when it comes time for budget cuts, right?
Absolutely.
Think about, okay, you're right. Yeah, you're the CMO, you're the CCO. Okay, fourth quarter's coming, you need to cut 10%. So much easier to go to the agency and say, we're going to cut our program cost by 10%, as opposed to laying 10% of your workforce off, right? You just give yourself so much more freedom that way. The second part of that trend that in our view is driving it is all due respect to in-house agency talent, right? We're not here to say that in-house agency folks are not talented. We don't mean it that way at all. But one of the many things that I know I've learned since returning to the agency side after literally 3 decades on the client side. By the way, why are we called clients first, right? Because the high majority of Jeff's and my experience is on the client side, not the agency side. So we think like clients first, right? And that's where we've been for the better part of the last 3 decades. But since I have returned to my agency roots, if you will, I have discovered, everyone may not agree with this, the best talent, at least now, tends to be on the agency side. Could be in the form of freelancers these days, and we're going to talk about that. You just have some seriously talented people on the agency side. This is what they do, they live it, they breathe it. And we've just been not surprised, but just validated how much talent there is on the agency side.
If you're a snack food manufacturing, you may make potato chips and pretzels and whatever. You don't think of running a PR agency or running a marketing group. So we help you focus on that. Now, when John talks about getting rid of your
Yeah.
internal agency, that doesn't mean getting rid of your entire marketing staff and PR staff, but you put people there who can direct your activities going forward and
Yeah.
utilize this outside PR firm to do the blocking and tackling. That's really what we're saying. And in some cases, provide guidance on strategy.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, let's face it, a lot of time on the client side, but yeah, some time on the agency side. What's one of the best parts about being in an agency? You're doing a different thing, maybe not every day, but you're not 100% of the time focused on one product, one company. So you can bring experience from across the aisle, if you will, from other companies, other industries. And then you mix all of those people together, and you just tend to get, in my view, fresher ideas, newer ideas, because the people in that room are just bringing them in from so many different spaces, right? As opposed to people who have been in the same company and thus the same industry for 10 years might get a little stale. Probably at least easier on paper for that to occur, right? And then I guess that's the third point. It's just fresh eyes. I mean, which many would argue is the ultimate value of an outside agency is just fresh eyes, right? Because of all of these things, this is why we see this trend occurring of in-house agencies moving to, if not to Jeff's point, exclusively outsourced, largely outsourced. So you might say, okay, give me an example. Well, a brand new example, this just happened last month. Keurig Dr. Pepper, based right here north of Dallas, has recently dismantled its in-house agency, which it actually branded. You don't always hear about that, right? But in this case, they had branded their in-house agency as Liquid Sunshine, which I actually think is kind of a cool brand. But how many people were in this agency? 80 people serving 125 brands throughout the company's portfolio. They completely disbanded it, meaning that those 80 people are now on the market, right? Was Keurig Dr. Pepper the first to do it? No. Will they be the last to do it? No, they won't. So, and I don't know. I mean, these things, Jeff, that we talk about, fresh eyes and all that kind of stuff, that's always been true of the value of going outside. I suppose maybe a lot of it is the economy. You just
Oh,
companies
sure.
want that flexibility, right?
When you say clients first, the other thing is we've been clients. We've been clients of big agencies.
Right.
And, one
Right.
of things we've seen, and we say this often when we're talking to prospects, is that when you first get the first conversation with the
Oh yeah.
agency, they bring their top people to the table, the head of the technology practice, the head of the travel practice or whatever, and they come to the table and they say, well, we'd like to do this, this, and this for you. And they turn it into a big production that says, hey, we say, oh, that's fantastic. But then when you actually get things in motion, you're dealing with junior staffers who really haven't been around the block too many times. And that's one thing that you can look at when you're looking at a smaller agency is that if you have two or three or how many ever really senior people who have a lot of wisdom and experience, we can bring it to the table right away. And there are plenty of other agencies that can do the same thing. But that's one thing that you need to keep in mind. And I know John and I have really good BS meters, and we see it right away. So that's one thing you should always consider when you're evaluating agencies.
From a client perspective, what's the single most annoying thing that an agency will do other than over promising and under delivering? I think it's what you just identified. Boy, we bought you guys. We said yes to you because Joe and Carol did an amazing job in the presentation. And now where are Joe and Carol? Right?
They're nowhere to be seen.
Nowhere to be seen. And it's really annoying. If you are listening to this and you've only been on the agency side and you've never been the client, don't do that. It feels like a bait and switch.
I was going to say those same words, John. It
It's
is a bait and switch. And
right. But in the meantime, we've already said sorry to all of the other contenders. We've already signed the contract. We're in. We may have announced it publicly. We're kind of in it with you. But now you're immediately annoying us, right? The second trend, and that was a good bridge, Jeff, into this, away from the larger agencies and in favor of the smaller ones. So for those of you who are students of the agency business, you've seen the headlines, right? Omnicom IPG merger, which is still going through antitrust and things like that, I believe. That will likely lead to a lot of duplication, meaning people on the street. There have been massive layoffs at Edelman, which for years has been the world's largest PR firm. I believe that is no longer true. I don't know if that's because of the layoffs, though. I don't want to imply that, but I believe they're number two now. But it's news. It was big news in the industry, massive layoff. And then WPP, their media buying unit, also had fairly recently, I think just in the last couple of weeks, a pretty major layoff. So what I say in the LinkedIn piece was all of this has laid bare an inconvenient truth. The big agencies are no longer where it's at. And that may sound a little rude, maybe, but I believe it's true. I believe it's true. And I think it's true for too many large agency employees. And I'm talking about career large agency employees who, despite their hard work each and every day, think about it, they're ultimately no more than corporate pawns. Omnicom, IPG, WPP, these are very large, oftentimes publicly traded holding companies. And so it should be no surprise that people are just corporate pawns, right? Despite, I'm sure, the best efforts of all of these holding companies to protect jobs as much as they can, in the end, especially if you're publicly traded, it's about the stock price. It's about, did you make the quarter, blah, blah, blah. Smaller agencies don't have that problem because they're almost all privately held, right? Doesn't mean things are easy. Anyway, I think the point is you just see a lot of churn among larger agencies right now. I also think that too many large agency leaders are unduly affected by this. I'm talking about people who worked their way up, right? I mean, they may have started right out of college, Jeff, right? They worked their way up. It's hard work. Agency life is hard. I remember my last
the
day as
term. Yeah.
it's yeah, it's hard. I remember my last day. I think I've told you this story before, Jeff. My last day as a reporter. And all of my fellow reporters and editors took me out to lunch. And I was moving to a PR firm. I was going to the dark side, right? As many reporters like to say, right? And the lunch turned into a roast. And essentially the theme of the roast was John's going to the easy side of the street. He's going to have it easy. He gets to take reporters to lunch. He gets to do all the fun, cool, easy stuff. While those of us ink-stained wretches are still here, you know, at 7 o'clock at night trying to write the story with the editor yelling at them, and we have it hard, and you're going to have it easy, right? A decent part of me believed them, right? I didn't think I was going to easy street, But part of me was thinking, I think this is going to be at least a little easier. I was wrong. I was dead wrong. I had never worked as hard as I did when I was at the two PR firms I worked at. Why is that? You're caught in the middle. You're fundamentally caught in the middle. You got the client over here, they want this. You got the journalists over here, they want the clients want X, the journalists want Y, right? It's like a referee. If
You got to figure out
it's
how they're going
almost
to.
impossible to make either team happy, right? I think that isn't there a saying that if both teams hate the ref at the end of the game, the ref probably did a good job.
That's doing a good
Yeah,
job. Yeah. No,
right.
that's right.
I'm talking about people who worked really hard for a long time. Well, but guess what's happened in this churn that we're talking about? A lot of really high level people have lost their jobs. So it's
Well,
not
absolutely.
just that the 25-year-olds, low person on the totem pole, have been out of luck with the short straw. It's been senior people too. So in my view,
And John, we know a lot of them. We know a lot of them. We could give you
it,
names if you wanted
it,
to of
it,
really super qualified people.
super qualified people who've been left holding the bag. That's just happening a lot lately at larger agencies. And then, as Jeff mentioned, we've talked to enough clients and prospects to know that the dynamic, Jeff, that you brought up, what did I call them? Joe and Carol?
Yeah.
Senior people, great presentation. We want Joe and Carol. Where did Joe and Carol go? Um, it's that's by the way also often unfair for the younger people who are now
Right.
in charge of the relationship because they're doing their best. They just don't have the experience, right?
Right.
All of these things we believe from our own experience, but this is also stuff we've seen in the market from reading a lot to keep up on what's going on. All of these things are combining individually and collectively to create a situation where if you are at a smaller agency, this is probably the right time to be in a smaller agency.
I agree with that, John. One thing you have to always consider, and this is something I've seen dealing with large agencies and actually working for one at one point, is that when it comes down to that table where you're sitting there with the agency and their top leaders and everything else, I think it comes down to, especially if they're held by a publicly held company,
Yeah.
um, is it sales or expertise? And we tend to side with expertise. Sometimes when you're dealing with a big agency that's publicly traded, sales are the top priority. Now, expertise is always a part of the puzzle, but we'd always rather, and a small agency, I think it's probably a good bet. They're putting expertise ahead of sales.
I don't disagree. The key with a smaller agency is we could go on and on about this, right? But the challenge for a smaller agency is you have to have enough people with experience, right? I mean, hey, smaller agencies in many ways have always been better. You probably also always got more attention from the higher ups. Well, from a client perspective, you better hope that those higher ups have experience too. If you've got a couple of 25-year-olds who've decided, I don't even want to deal with larger agency life. We're going to start our own agency now, right? Based on what? You don't have any experience, right?
Right.
And so yeah, so this is it's not like all is perfect and easy for smaller agencies either. Said another way, I suppose not only on our behalf but on behalf of all smaller agencies, in our view, welcome to the era of the smaller agency. I don't think that's ever been more true than it is now. What do you think about that, Jeff?
No, I agree. I agree. I think we're in the sweet spot, and it's a good time to be in that sweet spot. That doesn't mean we're going to win every pursuit we go on, but it gives you options.
No.
And I think that if you have the option of going with a smaller firm, if you think that's going to be right for you, this is the right time. And if you're working in a smaller firm or founded a smaller firm, we think it's a good time of opportunity.
Yeah, if you have founded a smaller firm, good for you. We hope you have the requisite experience that clients deserve and need. And again, none of this means the smaller agencies don't have challenges, right? Number one, yes, you better make sure you have enough senior level experience. Number two, you have to prove that you can actually do the work, right? The larger agency has that track record. They have more case studies, right? There's more there historically over time. A smaller agency has that burden that you have to prove to the client or the prospective client that you can actually do the work. You also have to prove that you have arms and legs, right? So,
Mhm.
right people, which, as Jeff has said, is going to be part 3 of this 3-part podcast series we're doing, in a couple of weeks after this, and in Jeff's next LinkedIn piece at the beginning of August, if you end up going there, like we talked about, that's going to be focused on this third leg of right people. And just to give you a very quick teaser, we have advertised ourselves as being basically this agency, but we have built up a pretty large, very talented network of people. I would argue that any small agency needs to have something like that, their own version of that, to show that you have arms and legs to serve a client that needs arms and legs, right? Geographically, functionally, whatever, right? And then, another challenge that I can identify for smaller agencies is, you know, you, you better avoid the trap of being the cobbler's children, right? By ensuring that your messaging is spot on, right? Easy for us to say to our clients, well, what's our own messaging, right? And if you're a smaller agency, especially if you're a startup, what is your messaging? Is it strategic? Is it unique? Is it compelling? Is it going to get people to pay attention to you as a smaller firm? And if you think about it, okay, welcome to the era of the smaller agencies. That means more of us, right? It means a more crowded space. Let's say there's a basket of clients and prospects who decide for whatever reason, yeah, it's time for a smaller agency. Well, there's more of us than ever now. So you better stand out, right? Through your messaging, through the way you present yourself, through your website, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is that it's not like there aren't challenges for smaller agencies.
When you're looking at a firm, and I'm not saying us, I mean, it could be any firm, measure that level of talent, measure that level of experience, but look at all the different facets as well. Um, and one thing I learned when I got promoted to Vice President of Global Communications way back at EDS was that I didn't know everything. I had a big team around me, and I still had this impression that I was king of the world. I knew everything. I could rewrite anything. And it took me about a day on the job to think, okay, no, I don't. And I've got these experts. Let's utilize them. And that's another thing, if you've got a decent sized team around you and people who kind of fill in your gaps, really powerful. So whether you go with someone like a Clients First, where you have two of us, but we've got all these different people we work with almost on a daily basis, um, or another agency, you want to make sure that you've got enough people there with expertise and can fill in any gaps.
Well said. That probably made you a very good person to work for, by the way. If you realized pretty quickly and admitted to yourself that I don't have all the answers, I do need to utilize everybody's expertise, right? A lot of the people in our network have experience as an agency person and a client person, right? Obviously, Jeff and I value the client side perspective. That's one of the main reasons, frankly, why we call ourselves Clients First, because we think like clients first. We can say to a CMO, we've been you. We can say to a CCO, we've been you. We get it, right? If you have client side experience, Jeff, you mentioned it earlier, we've managed agencies. The BS meter is strong for us, right? But on the other side of the coin, if you've been on the agency side, you've learned a lot of stuff there too. You have a service mentality, for one thing. You're able, like we've talked about, to take in experience from other industries and other companies. You're used to learning on the job almost and doing something different every day. There's value on both sides of the fence, right? So as Jeff mentioned up front, this is a new part of On the Offense where we're going to offer you 3 takeaways at the end of our discussion on each podcast. And these are, we think you can do to put yourself on the offense, if you will, which again is the theme of these podcasts. That's what we're always about. Hopefully that comes through clearly, that we're all about being on the front foot in any way you can be, right? So 3 takeaways. Number 1, if you want better service from your agency, and that could be an ad agency, a PR firm, could be anything. If you want better service from your agency, give a smaller one a chance, right? There are a lot of people out there who are just not willing to do that, right? What's the old saying? You never get fired by hiring IBM, right? I'm sure there's a measure of comfort in saying I hired X or Y, right? The CEO will have heard of them, and you probably won't get a ton of pushback, right? Assuming you made the hire you're making the recommendation for good reasons, but you're not going to get pushback on the brand as opposed to who, right? Give a smaller agency a chance if you've had frustrations and are looking for something better. Number 2, if you do insist on a larger agency for whatever reason, negotiate a minimum number of hours from the senior talent. If you were to do that, Joe and Carol, we really like Joe and Carol, right?
Oh, they're my best buddies.
What's that?
They're my best buddies.
They're my best buddies. We love Joe and Carol. Okay, well, guess what, Joe and Carol and team? We want you guys. We think you're the winner of the bake-off. And before we negotiate the contract with you, we would like to make sure that Joe and Carol are still going to be involved at a minimum of X hours a week, whatever it is. If they have a problem with that, run far and run fast, because that is a clear indication that you're going to have a problematic relationship on your hands, right? I'm not saying use it as a test, but it isn't a bad test if you think about it, right? Now, if you're asking for something that's going to be difficult for Joe and Carol's agency to live up to, given all of the other things that they have to do, I mean, they're going to have to figure it out internally, right? That's why you have a team. So yeah, see how far you can push on that if Joe and Carol are that important to you. And then the third takeaway in terms of getting you on the offense in this agency world, if you need a freelancer, and we haven't talked a lot about freelancing, but you think back to all that churn we've talked about with the big agencies. If you believe LinkedIn, and we do, there is more senior level talent on the market now than just about ever before. There are tons of people out there who are really good and really talented, regardless of whether they came from a large agency, but many have, who are now freelancing. And frankly, that's one of the reasons, Jeff, right, we've been able to build up this network, right? Find them on LinkedIn. If you just say, we just need a freelancer, we just need somebody to come in and do a project, go out and find them on LinkedIn. Now, that might sound like we're sending you out to the edge of the Pacific Ocean with a fishing pole saying, find a fish, right? I mean, good luck with that. But there's never been more senior talent on the market, and many advertise themselves as being available on LinkedIn. I'm talking about openly That's one of the interesting things that's happened in recent years with social, Jeff, that if you're open to work, people just say it now. If you just got laid off by Edelman, people will do posts saying, hey, world, I just got laid off. And it's really not a big deal that people are doing that. They get tons of encouragement from their peers. And it's kind of nice to see that, right? But if somebody is willing to do that, has the guts to put themselves out there like that, I mean, they're probably pretty good at what they do. They're not going to be afraid to get on the phone with a reporter.
Yeah, I was
right?
It shows a level
and
of
pitch
fear.
a story. These are people who don't have a lot of fear, and it's just much more common and normal now for people to say that stuff. Well, what that does to you, if again you're looking for a freelancer, it just makes it easier for you to find them. So use LinkedIn to your advantage. It's all out there, laid out for you, like never before. I'd say happy 4th to all. Happy kickoff of the second half of the year. Yes, it is. But the good news to that, Jeff, now that it's July, you can almost start to hear the drumbeat of college football.
Oh, that's true. That is true.
Right? You can just start to
We
see
both
it. You can start to hear the drums out there a little bit. NFL training camps open this month. It's coming. It's coming. So yeah, happy 4th. Stay cool. Keep your eyes on us as we go to the next level in some of the ways we present ourselves. We're really looking forward to that. Give smaller agencies a chance. There's a lot of talent in these agencies. We're just one example.
Hey, thanks for taking the time to join us. We know there's a lot of things you're busy with that you could be doing, and taking this little amount of time to listen to us spout off. That's really appreciated. Second thing, if you're on social media or whatever else, join us, like us, whatever you need to do to show that we're having an impact or that you see us as being credible. We are on all the different social networks. I mean, we've got a presence across the board. I'll just tell you, I really hope you had a great 4th of July, had a good time with your families, and we're revving up for college football season. Hey, everyone, love you. We'll talk to you soon.
See y'all later.